Well, Leo, see, I'm Phil. It's my co-host Corey, and tonight we're talking about, oh my God, UAPs or
Is that what we're yaps? Yups.
whoops, whoops.
But we're not even really talking about UAPs. Honestly,
Not
what we're
really.
talking about is the, I guess, how
More of
long ago
the
did the testimony happen?
like 4 weeks, something like that. It was in
Longer than
June
that.
or July. I don't think so. Was
Summer's
it?
going by. It's hard to tell.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is big news, man. This is the Senate, the Congressional Senate, sitting down with a whistleblower who happens to be like a former, decorated
Not just
soldier.
a whistleblower.
Well, there are three, but
Correct.
really, Grush is the. So there's a fellow named David Grush, and David Grush, if you Google him, it's Grush with an S. Yeah, or C S.
So walk me through what are we talking about tonight, Phil? How about we we'll go
We're
there.
talking about a gentleman who basically, came through, and decided that he was going to pull the pants down of the UFO hidden conspiracy in the United States of America. Does that make sense? No?
Sure, let's run with it. See, this is the problem when we talk about hidden conspiracy. The security intelligence community, by its very nature, is hidden and secretive because
Right.
you don't want to go off and have everybody know your secrets, so you hide them.
Yeah, you hide them.
So
it's a good
secrecy
idea.
makes sense.
Yeah. Well, so basically this guy was part of a governmental group to investigate UFOs, or as they now call them, UAPs,
Now,
unidentified
why did they
aerial.
change the name, Phil?
I don't know. Do you know why? Because it
Because
doesn't
UFOs
make any.
has the connotation. UFOs have a wackadoo connotation. Oh, unidentified flying object. Those are aliens. Oh, unidentified aerial phenomenon. Oh, those aren't aliens. Well, wait a second.
Right.
It's literally the same thing. Unidentified in the air.
Right. So,
But by divesting, it's like a rebranding. Think of it like Twitter versus X.
well, they were calling them. What else were they calling? There was another name because there was UFO, and then there was something else.
If I can find.
Yeah, and then they went to UAP because I was like, what's going on here? Can you find it?
There was UOs, unidentified objects, unidentified aerial phenomenon, unidentified
That's the
flying
one.
objects.
Aerial, yeah. So anyway, there's just so many. Basically, it's shit we don't understand that's up in the air that's moving around,
And this is
or
why
underwater,
which I guess would not be aerial, but still,
correct.
I mean,
Yeah.
hey, remember Shag Harbor? We don't know what that was that we shot down, but they got blown up. We're pretty sure those little things flying after it were rockets of some sort. We don't know what it was that got blown up. Harbor, another episode.
Poor guys, the little aliens in their ship. What's going on?
Or the test pilots, or the Russian test pilots that are like, Yuri,
oh no,
Yuri, bad.
They think we're aliens. So yeah,
what accent is that? That's like Scottish.
Yuri. No, this is Mother Russia.
That's better.
Right. Yeah. So basically, this guy David Grush, he's a decorated soldier. He's basically he's got top secret level clearances.
When you say decorated, what do you mean decorated? So the details I found about him weren't so much. I think decorated might be a bit of a stretch. I mean, he
served in Afghanistan. He was obviously the terms that decorated means he didn't get like kicked out for, he was
fair enough.
He's got some commendation of some sort. So he was there. And what had happened was he started to ask questions, and he started to become part of the group that he was asking the right questions in this committee. And he was basically like starting to go, well, there seems to be a lot of unanswered questions within the community. He was hitting roadblocks with places, with finding out about information.
And so this is the thing. When you talk about clearance, for example, You can have the
Yeah.
highest super awesome clearance you want. There's two components: clearance and need to know.
Right.
I think we can all agree Dave didn't need to know. So if
Dave didn't need to know.
I was
However,
on the other end, he's asking questions, I'd be like, no, I'm not going to tell you.
no,
Well, I'm cleared. No, I'm not going to tell you
no,
because you don't need
still
to know.
doesn't matter. Well, but turns out most of the stuff that he found out, didn't need top secret clearance. It
That's
was
not surprising.
very, very open and kind of like need to know. And yeah, so he kind of got into this world where people were coming to him and saying, yeah, this is what we do here. And that we have actual, crashed vessels or vessels we have shot down, these unidentified aerial phenomenon. And we also
Maps.
have their pilots, which are non-human biologics.
Okay, so let's touch on that.
I love that.
Now,
Non-human
my
biologics.
first thought when they said non-human biologics, I'm like,
They're
okay.
monkeys.
Well, okay,
No,
so
that was
this
mine.
no, you laugh, but that was my first thought. Like, okay, wait a second.
We sent a chimp to the moon. Come on.
If exactly, or we sent dogs to space.
Yeah.
I'm thinking myself that if you were going to go off and test something,
It
okay,
can go
maybe
85 million miles an hour. Yeah.
would you want to be the test pilot to volunteer? I wouldn't. Okay,
No.
let's go off and check in. Let's hook a dog or a chimp up to some sensors, put them in a remotely piloted whatever, have it zipping
and see what it does to them.
and see what it does to them. Because one of the things I was listening to one of the YouTube videos, and they were going on about it during the testimony, how it came up that first off, our material sciences you couldn't do this with our existing material sciences, but what they're doing would tear pilots apart.
Oh, for sure.
Like the pilots would not survive.
Well, the other interviewees, Fravor, Commander Fravor, who's been on multiple,
Commander David Fravor.
David Fravor, yes.
By the name.
And then
Navy
Graves.
Boy.
Yeah. So he was Navy. Ryan Graves, who was also a pilot.
RJ.
Was he RJ?
No, I don't know. I'm just giving him nicknames.
RJ Cool. That was his handle.
That's right. That's right. His handle was Top Gun 2.
Top Gun
Maverick
2.
3.
He was a handsome fella. He's like, yeah, look at me. So these two guys are pilots, and they're corroborating. Well, the Pentagon released footage, which I thought was really weird.
This was the Tic Tac one. Okay, so I think we need to come back.
Fravor, yeah. Let's
go back to the first incident of where this happened. That we have some documented release footage.
We're talking to me, our buddy Grush Dave. Is not the David Grush though is not, or is Dave Grush?
David Grush. It is David Grush. Yeah. There's two Davids.
Two Davids. So Grush to me isn't the big part of the story. He's basically
but he ties the stuff together. So this is the funny
part. He starts to tie things together, and then you have actual visual proof based on a $100 million plane taking these photographs,
piloted by professional,
not just professional
pilots, combat
the commander
of
this group, who is like, now when we talk about decorated, this dude flies everything.
Correct. This is an example of decorated. When you talk about David and Ryan,
had actual combat experience shooting shit down. And so when they were doing a training exercise, so this is in 2004, and so when he describes it, he goes, well, we were doing a training exercise. We didn't have any weaponry actually on the planes at that time, and they were called to, basically there was some the tower was saying, there's something going on out here. We want you guys to check in on it. And I guess there was a lot of drug smuggling and things. So they would quite often just go, when you see jets coming in, it makes you fuck off out of their airspace, right? And this was different. So when they approached this thing, it was stationary in the air. And there's video footage of this where they can tell with the radar where this thing is sitting, and all of a sudden it like takes off and goes.
What was this thing? What did it look like, Phil?
A Tic Tac. It looked like a little, well, not little. Like he described it as probably being, he was estimating about the size of a city bus, 45, 50 feet long, and sitting as they came across on this thing, and then it just took off, gone, and it covered like 300 kilometers in something like 2 seconds, which is unheard of. You would have to be moving like Mach 50, flying, and that's not even the weird part. So after it does that, they start to kind of accumulate because there's a team of them there. I think there was 3 or 4 of them. There wasn't just him. He
I
wasn't
think
alone.
it was a combat patrol.
They were doing some
crew
training.
consists of 4 members, which were called to
Yeah,
investigate an unidentified flying object at the coast of San Diego while they were out on a training exercise.
that's right. They were doing training, so that's why they weren't armed. Like he's like, well, we don't really have any weapons, so. But they were going to not engage, but to check it out.
So it's
So
funny
they're
you mentioned the unarmed. Just to interrupt for one quick sec here,
yeah.
they had some of the stuff I was seeing about UAPs and that Russia originally would engage them, and after a bunch of their jets got shot down, and there was a colonel that wrote a Dear John letter saying, "Yeah, we've lost a bunch of planes and pilots because it turns out they would shoot at these things and." That would go poorly. They would disable our jets and they would crash to the ground. So we stopped doing that. And it turns out we don't die anymore. So
So
these guys might have made this might have saved their life, not having weapons on their ships.
well, not yeah, no active weapons. But what did happen as they approached this thing, it jammed their radar, which is an act of war. You're not
Sure.
allowed to jam anybody's radar anywhere on this planet. And it
Well, I
was
think you can do it if you're. I want to say if you're in my
if
country,
you're if
if
you're
you're over
at
my air,
war,
yeah.
if
If
you're
you're in my
at
airspace, I can do whatever the hell I want. If you're in my airspace,
perhaps, yeah.
but if you're in my airspace, no.
Right.
You need to apologize and move on.
Right. And so basically he's like, okay, this is really weird. And the tower's reading like they can still, because the ship's radar is being jammed, but the actual radar on the coast is not.
Okay.
So they're still tracking this thing. And so they're like, well, where did it go? And the tower says, well, it went up. And they're like, like it went straight up. It went 80 kilometers straight up. Now, I don't know if you know what's above 80 kilometers straight up, but it's called fucking outer space.
You're getting to different layers of the atmosphere. Yeah, you're like
Yeah, you're
stratosphere,
floating. Like
heliosphere,
you're yeah,
you're now
you're not now in where planes fly or
that's right.
anything that we have other than fucking
You're loading a
rockets.
rocket and you're launching it up, and hopefully to get past that because the air is too thin to support you. So you need to use your thrust to get out of it to get to
That's
space so you can
correct.
float. Otherwise, you
Yeah.
come back down.
Well, this thing didn't miss a beat. So it fucking went 80 kilometers up in a second and stayed there for a second and then went fucking 80 kilometers down in a second. So, of course, these guys are like, what the fuck? And it was also doing some very peculiar aerial
That's what I heard. Like the
maneuvering.
zigzag, it was doing weird zigzags that you would not be able to do if you were following traditional like jets.
Right.
You've got things, and yeah, you can do cool stuff, but you got
No,
forward
you are
movement, and you can't
right.
do this.
So one other thing that it did was it was playing with them. It was, and that's how he describes it. He goes, it was just playing with us. It wasn't really, it just seemed like it was curious and playing because they would fly and try and get on it. And they're in like state of the art F-18s at this point.
They were the Super Hornets, right? They were the
Yeah,
Super Hornets. They like the
for
F-18s or F-16s or whatever there
so,
are. They're the
probably
Super Hornets.
18s.
Whatever the Super Hornets
They're
are.
they're top of the food chain planes that at the time anyway in
F-18.
2004. What's that, sorry? It was an
F-18.
F8. Yeah, it's an
Yep.
F-18. And so they would chase it a little bit and then the fucking thing would just stop dead in midair. And you're in a jet doing Mach. Boom. You fly over it. Like, and they also saw this thing moving on top of the water. So you're flying almost Mach on the water. Like, that doesn't make any sense, right? So And this is all documented. It's on their so even though they were jamming the radar and some of the other instrumentation, the cameras were still picking this up. They have these cameras that are
Yep. Now, I
rolling.
learned they de-res them when they release stuff, so that was interesting. You know how they one of the complaints Neil deGrasse
Oh,
Tyson had mentioned saying, "Oh, it's all blurry, blah blah blah," and
yeah, they
apparently
did.
that's by intent. When the U.S. military
Sure.
declassifies footage, they'll
Yeah.
de-res it so that you can't, I don't know, get details like
He said it was a
in.
silver fucking Tic Tac. I mean, he goes, it looked like a Tic Tac. And so what happened with Fravor, which I find interesting, is when this guy came out and said stuff, there had been hundreds and hundreds of other pilots who have experienced similar stuff,
Yep.
and they were basically told to shut their fucking mouths.
Well, they
They're
were
like,
so. This is the problem. There's the culture of. They talk about the shaming aspect, the culture of
right,
ridicule, where it's like,
that's right.
you know what? If you see it, just pretend you didn't and move on with your life, because there's nothing good that comes. Nothing good comes out of this for you. You're not going to be.
Your career, yeah, is basically, yeah,
And
you
this is
want your fucking.
backfiring on them, though.
It is now, but like Fravor is like, I'm retiring. And when he retired, he was like, well, this is what happened. And but he's still part of the congressional, like when they declassified it, he's allowed to talk about it.
Correct.
And that's where he's like, hey, it's declassified. I can say whatever the fuck I want. And but being a commander, a lot of guys came to him and said, I've seen this, I've seen that. And that's sort of also where this guy Graves, Ryan Graves, comes in, because
Yep.
his was in what, 2017.
I've got 2014,
Oh,
but again,
2014.
but this is the
Maybe no,
problem.
so yeah, there's so many numbers.
I've also seen different numbers, and I think they've had multiples.
Well, he was also doing a training exercise. I think where was that one? I think it was off of a ship. So these ships, these aircraft carriers as well, they're a lot of these fucking things have seen some wild shit out at sea, right? And they just don't talk about it. It's just it's all classified or what have
Yep.
you. But similar idea, except there was multiple Tic Tacs and there was multiple
I was
UAPs.
gonna say I don't remember him saying Tic Tacs,
No,
but there were
UAPs.
definitely multiple, and I never found any real descriptions of
Well,
what.
he describes them as because they were not close enough, and they also
Yep.
were jammed. Their
Mhm.
radar was jammed completely, and numerous other sensors that were kind of like really important, I guess, for tracking. So their like weapon systems were disabled. Like they were not able to, like, their lock and target depends upon their um I guess
Target lock. I watched Top Gun. I know
yeah,
target lock, missile
just
lock, missile lock, missile
missile
lock.
locked. Oh no. So it makes you wonder when you have these guys. So he was a really big part of, he actually became, this Ryan Graves, he became like a, how do I explain that? He became part of this investigative group
He
that started,
founded the Americans for Safe
yeah,
Aerospace.
right. And by doing so, um, he started to open up that there were not just military pilots, but commercial pilots who
Yep.
have seen a lot of stuff and who are like basically were being threatened to keep their mouths shut, based on their careers, right? And so and the government now is trying to create a safe environment for you to be
Well,
a
they have to,
whistleblower,
but
right?
so there's two parts here. There's the whistleblower legislation, but there's also
Yeah,
you want as a government, a military industrial complex, you want to know if there's Russia's got a new plane flying around. So if you ridicule
absolutely.
people, if you go off and say, "Ah, you know what, man, you drank a lot with your flight there. You didn't see what you thought you saw." That discourages people from reporting, which means you don't know that Russia has a Tic Tac that can fly at Mach 5.
Well, yeah, and well, the speeds that they recorded were beyond. They couldn't. They were so fast they couldn't record the speed. our radars weren't able to record the actual speed of the vessel. For Fravor anyway, but like this thing was moving like he goes, how long does it take the rocket moving Mach 20 to leave the atmosphere? Right? This thing does it in like no time, like a second. So what kind of technology is that? So this Graves guy also was like these things were hovering at like 30,000 feet in the wind. So that was the big thing that he said, in which most people don't even consider. But like at 30,000 feet, there's a massive amount of turbulence, right?
Yeah,
That's where we
flying a
get
plane. Flying a
Yeah,
plane.
right. That's where commercial airlines fly, right? At 30,000 ish feet. And he's like, this thing was sitting, and they could tell that it wasn't moving, but it also wasn't turbulent. So it was being able to stationarily hold its position in this like basically 130 knot winds. That's what he describes it as. It's like a tornado. Like when you have a hurricane, those winds are always there. They just kind of come down
So
to
this is
visit.
cool. This is cool with regards to aviation. Have you heard of fly-by-wire?
I've heard of it. Yeah,
So essentially, a plane, because of what you discussed, wants to go everywhere at once.
of course.
So by the way it's set up when you're flying a plane, apparently the way they're structured is it prevents you from going anywhere, and then you basically, when you're flying, you're simply letting it go in a direction, as opposed to
Right,
like a helicopter. When you're going up, down, with a plane, it wants to go everywhere at once. You have to stop it and have it only go the way you want. So
right.
fly by wire is more about letting it, ride that wind current and keeping it from riding that other current that causes it to spin around.
To have turbulence, yeah. Well, and this is the stuff, right? And I mean, there's so much of it, and there's so many people coming forward now, and the fact that and you when you watch I don't know if you watched. You said you watched maybe watched bits and pieces
I wasn't
of
going to
the
watch two
actual.
and a half hours of
No,
the
because it's a lot of him
representative from
saying,
Missouri would like to.
I've already explained.
I can't tell you anything because we're not in the right area. But if you could ever
However,
get in the right area,
this is it. So no, that's not true. He did tell them. So in a private meeting, he explained to them the people and the names and all that great stuff. He just, because of the whistleblower, he still cannot divulge classified information to the general public,
sure. But you
right?
also can't do that in a closed door. You have to do it in a secure area, right? So depending on the
Correct.
classification of information, you can't go off and say, "Okay, let's go to your office and I'll tell you everything."
No, he
You
kept
can you
calling it something.
a skiff or a skiff or a
Yes,
skew. Yes, secure
yeah, and
compartmentalized information facility.
oh, you see, you're so smart. I had no, I'm like, well, we did this in the skiff when we were in the skiff, and I'm
Yes,
like, skiff? You mean like a boat? That's a skiff.
the
It's a
skiff.
small
I'm
boat.
a skiffer.
Yeah. So, um, but anyway, yeah. But you have these senators. They're very convinced. A lot of them are like. So one of these guys is like he's the overseer of DARPA. Okay, so DARPA being the brainchild of all sorts of crazy fucking research, right? And he's like, I tried to gain access to one of these facilities that Buddy was talking about, not classified facility, and just to talk to some people to see what you know if I could just get access. Totally denied. Like this is a U.S. senator with
A
multiple
congressman.
clearances, or congressman, sorry, not
Yeah.
senator, congressman with multiple clearances. He's like, I have multiple clearances, and I couldn't talk to anybody. And I'm like,
Did you hear about how they're thinking of trying to get around all this?
no,
Are you familiar with the Holman rule?
not at all. But it
Okay,
sounds like
so
something.
so there's
Yeah,
apparently it's a little piece of legislation that essentially allows Congress to go off and apply to control spending. So it's not designed for this. It's not designed to arm
right.
twist. It's designed so that Congress can have control over expenditures because technically they do, right?
Well, they should, but that's
Yeah.
the other problem. is that they don't know where all these expenditures go. So that's the biggest problem that they
Sure.
have.
So what with the Holman rule, what the talk to get them to say, hey, you need to tell us these things. Otherwise, we're going to use this to cut your funding, to fire staff.
Right.
We are going
Right.
now, we can't force you to do it. But what we can
Right.
do is make your life difficult until you do it. So maybe you should do it. Now, the neat part about the shenanigans that are going on is some of the organizations, this is one of the things that came up during the testimony, were transferring the assets to private aerospace companies to put them outside of congressional oversight.
Right. Yeah, to the tune of like fucking $1 trillion, right?
Yes.
So that was where sorry, can't get my computer straight. But that's where they were talking about what it was the budgetary, because Grush kind of was involved in that as well, looking at budgets. That was probably one of his primary things, right? In some respects. And then the trail just goes like, there's basically the CIA can and the Pentagon can write checks for anything they want, but
well, it helps that
any
it's
consequence. It's an
it helps
endless.
that it's a it helps that it's a rounding error. All those budgets for some of those organizations. So when you think of the Pentagon, you think of the national security apparatus in the States, and you look at their budget, it's multiple times our country's GDP. And like these other little dinky things are all just rounding errors. Like,
well, yeah, like anyway, yeah. So that's where I think the Congress is mostly like, well, where is all this money going? What is this research? What is happening? When you got the head guy of DARPA going, hey, like I'm supposed to be like the guy, and then you find out I'm not the guy. We're not the guys. Skunk Works is getting funded, all these different, and then you find out what the fuck. And Grush is saying there are these bases all over the place. It's not just like Area 51,
of course not. This Area 51 is actually the perfect
decoy,
I guess like decoy.
Almost, right?
Like you've set it up. Everybody knows about it. Yeah, it's so as long as
it may have been the place.
May have been Groom Lake. May have been that. We have an episode, folks. Watch
Groom Lake, yes, and there's S4, like the different locations, the different sites where we talk about Bob Lazar, and Bob Lazar's come up with stuff.
I knew you were going to talk about.
I know.
Bob.
I can't. I love Bob, and here's the thing: is that Bob has fucking explained all this shit about the reverse engineering. Everything that he said is fucking correlated with this guy Grush, and it's like, see, and Bob's sitting back going, "This happened before I died." Perfect.
The problem is it lines up, but because he's already said it, if
from 1980,
I know, but if Grush is making stuff up, why would he make stuff up completely? He would say, "Oh, I'm confirming what was said by." So what were the interesting points? So let's look at the interesting points.
Yeah, so the interesting points is that Grush is there's kind of a secret governmental group.
Majestic 12. We'll call them Majestic 12.
So Majestic 12. Majestic 12. Didn't we do Majestic 12?
We covered it, I think, under our Area 51. I think Majestic.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever touched on. We might have. I don't know if we touched on it in our Secret
Project Blue Book.
Because it shows up in a bunch of them.
Yeah. So anyway, there's this group, and basically since 1930 that he can see legitimately is 1930 is when this sort of all began, which correlates with what famous crash. I mean, it's the Roswell sort of crash incident.
New Mexico.
In New Mexico. We covered that too. Watch, folks. Yeah. So basically, since then, this organization has worked in stealth inside the government, and varying branches are aware of it, and varying people.
The deep state, maybe.
Perhaps. And that they basically have numerous ships that they've tried to reverse engineer, as well as non-biologics that are also alive, and some that are not alive, that have been
the non-human biologics. So not non-biologics,
non-human biologics. That's right. So a fancy way of saying, and when he was asked of this world, he's like, no. Right, because they did ask, like, when you say non-human biologics, like a pigeon, No,
Monka?
not of this world. And craft not of this world, with technology not of this world. And I guess a lot of it, that we're seeing has been reverse engineered, right? And we're seeing it in different aircraft and different technologies that throughout human history in the last 100 years, right? So that's basically the gist of it, is that there are numerous things that the public doesn't know, and I think the public has a right to know, especially if there's you know
So let's get on to the nefarious part. So nobody, the idea of keeping secrets is not new. However, what
right,
about the element of harm? So this is the harm done by these non-human biologics, because I don't know, they rammed ships, but also the cover-ups, the harm done by that. So
right.
he touched on that, didn't he? He said
He's
essentially the reprisals, the
he
whatever.
did. The thing is that, well, in no time did he say that these or UAPs pose a threat to national security per se.
But if they
Uh,
did, we're screwed. That was my takeaway. If
they
these
all
things
said
were,
that.
yeah,
Like
if this
Fravor
was, if
said,
yeah,
these are like he goes, I'm a combat pilot. I've had to shoot down other planes and I've been shot at. There's no way you could ever.
we lose, we
We
lose.
lose. We
Yep.
just lose. Like, one of these things could take out our entire. This is the way it moves, how fast it moves. Like, imagine if it had weapons, and in all likelihood, or if it just jammed them, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
jams all their radar.
Shuts
Now they're
down your
blind.
plane. I don't need to shoot you down. I'm just
Yeah,
going to shut you down.
yeah.
You can't
I
dodge
shut the
that.
an EMP. Poof! All these planes fall out of the sky like
Yeah.
just dead birds. So no, and that's the thing, is that I think it's kind of moot. I think if you have that kind of technology, it's no longer like, oh my God, this is a national security thing. This is like, they would have done something already, right? If they wanted to. If this was a culture, like an alien civilization that was like, hey, we're coming here to, you know, I don't know, drink your water, sit on the beach, enjoy yourselves, collect seashells, and go home. I think that's all it is, man. Or a pit
Or they're
stop.
just like us looking at other planets. So if you think of our
Yeah,
approach, we would start with, we would send something to another planet to check it out. Like, look what we've done with
right.
Mars. We've sent a rover.
For
Okay. Now,
sure. It's
maybe
hanging
the
out there.
Martians that are banging, maybe the Martian natives that are lower on the technology scale are like, oh my God, look at this.
Yeah, it could
Right.
be.
This
It
could
could
be.
be.
It's yeah,
They're
look,
like
it's
peeking out of the sand going, what the
what the
fuck
hell?
is
It
that
fell
thing?
from the sky and it's driving around and it's grabbing stuff.
The one thing that is a little bit suspicious to me is that you know, we're seeing more and more of the military. Like, this is becoming more commonplace, especially over military bases, right? Where you're actually getting footage. And so there's a ton of footage from military bases.
And this comes back to, is the UAP alien or just a hostile an unfriendly nation using
That has
technology?
has a wicked technology 1,000 years ahead of us, right? That's the thing, is that that's where, like Fravor's like, listen, I know what we have now. He goes, we're not even like 500 years away from that kind of technology. There's just, it doesn't even exist. The thought of it doesn't exist,
Yeah.
right? So, but yeah, I think it's interesting. I think that there'll be a lot more with this Grush guy as time goes on,
Now, when we talk
or it
about
gets
Grush,
swept.
did you read some of his issues?
So, oh yeah. So
The
the
he's got some
alcoholic,
he's got some. Now it's all on record. So this is the nice thing. This is one of
yeah,
the, his situation is very well documented, like the issues he's reported, the fact he's
yep,
followed the whistleblower process. Like, there's a bunch of stuff that he's
yep,
like, he went to the Gang of Eight as part of the whistleblower process. That's the Senate, the Security Intelligence Oversight Committee. So the
right,
Gang of Eight, he went to
right,
them and told them all this stuff. So there's some stuff that's been shared, and this is all
sure.
documented
Yeah,
officially.
I mean, the
Same thing,
dirt
like his
comes
challenger.
out, right? The dirt's gonna come out.
Correct.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Well, he was a soldier. He was a combat veteran in Afghanistan. He's seen some shit, and yeah, he was an alcoholic with PTSD, and he wanted to kill himself.
Yep.
Shocking. Uh, and here we are. But
yeah,
his
so
commendations,
his wife had said she told him that he was an alcoholic and needed to get help, and he replied, "I've just been waiting for you to kill me."
which I don't know if that's a I want to kill myself, but whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, my wife's been waiting to kill me for years.
I'm just curious if when he says that he was saying waiting for his wife to kill him, or whether the sheriff's department to come off and kill him as part of the cover up. So this is where, because this was back in, this incident was back in 2018, so this was 5 years ago. So this is not
Oh, he's
super
deep in it
recent.
right then, though. He's
Yes,
deep in it. And can you imagine the stress? Can you
yeah.
imagine like what is going on and you're thinking like my family could be in danger. Like this is legit shit. Like there are plenty of groups that would shut him up within the government,
But it's
organization.
easier to impinge on your credibility,
Discredit,
right?
discredit him.
Discredit,
Yeah,
right? Attack your credibility. Do the ad hominem attacks versus
yeah.
provide counter evidence.
But you know what? In this day and age, nobody's shocked. You could tell. You could march an alien in or strip Joe Biden's head open and boop, there's a little alien. No one's going to even bat a fucking eyelash, man.
Still vote for him, right? They'd still vote for him. They'd still go, Joe. Donald could be a little alien in a fat suit, and it'd be like, you know what? It's not the Democrats. I voted for Kodo.
We live. If this had happened when you and I were in high school, the fucking world would have went bananas.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking bananas. But now we're like, whatever. What
I
a
don't know if that's
perfect
a good
time.
thing or a bad thing.
Bad thing. And I guess we should probably summarize a little bit
So
here. Do you want to summarize? Do you want me to do it?
Okay. This is your baby. Okay.
So we got congressional, Senate, all get together. Basically, we have David Grush who comes in and says, "Hey, there's fucking some shit going on. Aliens, craft, non-human biologics, all this other stuff, collaborated by guys, credible guys, I might add, like Ryan Graves, David Fravor, with tons of Pentagon released aerial footage. I think there's fucking aliens. That's my synopsis. I'm going out on a limb. 2023, we got aliens. We got some shit going on.
There's something going on. So again, I agree with you. There's something going on. Now, do we know what it is? No. However, there is something
it's fucking aliens
going
Corey.
on.
I think we need a bunker. I'm just saying.
Done. Start digging.
All right. And so our next episode will be let's follow the crazy train all the way to the moon.
All the way.
How about we do that?
Just like India, right? Russia turns, they can fire stuff at the moon and have it crash successfully. Apparently India can successfully land, and we can revisit moon madness. There we go.
They're going to have delicious food on the moon because Indian food is it's so good. Non-bread anyway. There you go. Well, thank you very much for watching the OC. I'm Phil. This is Corey, and we'll see you next week. And we're going to talk about moon bending and all the different delicious things that will be on the moon come 2024, probably. All right. We'll see you next week.
Take care, folks.